Hello, and thank you for joining us for the Meditation Center's monthly metaphysical lecture. It might be an understatement to say that we're living in unusual times. So much has changed in our country and our world, especially in the past few years. As I watch television, hearing about nearly 2 million deaths from a virus that we'd barely heard of a year ago, and people openly endorsing an alternative outcome of an election, and an angry mob storming the U.S. Capitol, one of the most significant symbols of our freedom in this country, I find it hard to believe that I'm observing a real-life, modern 21st century society and not a movie about the dark ages of centuries ago. As I contemplate on these things, a single line of scripture keeps coming to mind. Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they are doing. That is Luke chapter 23, verse 34, spoken by Jesus while being nailed to a cross by a similar angry mob. This famous sentence is probably one of the most well-known in Scripture, and perhaps one of the most misunderstood. Looking at recent events, it may be easier for us to understand that Jesus was an instigator of his time. He spoke out against religious traditions and norms that seemed unnecessary to him, and tried to demonstrate a newer, kinder way of looking at things that depended less on dogma and rules and more on personal responsibility. The Jewish leaders of the time saw him as a threat, just as many people today feel their religion is threatened by others who don't want to follow the strict rules established by their belief systems. It is in our nature as humans to fear change. It is in our nature to feel threatened when our beliefs are challenged. It is in our nature to be suspicious, especially when we hear rumors and gossip, true or otherwise, that resonate with that suspicious nature. It is in our nature to get riled up when the people around us get riled up. That is part of who we are as humans. It's not part of our spirituality, and it's not part of our sense of morality. It's a natural animal instinct that tries to protect us when our peace and comfort are threatened. That is what happened to the people of Jesus' time. He was seen as a threat to what they believed to be unquestionable truth, no matter how peacefully he did it or how much sense it made. And feeling threatened, people responded angrily. In the same 23rd chapter of Luke, Jesus is being questioned about his actions. He says very little, and no evidence is found that he has broken any laws. Yet the people are angry and demand justice. They shout, crucify him, because he did something they didn't like. He must be punished. He must be removed as a threat. Does this sound familiar? Think about a recent election that was held under the tightest scrutiny, yet thousands and maybe millions of people believe in their hearts that it wasn't valid, not just because it didn't turn out the way they wanted, but because the man who lost decided that it must be fraudulent, and the idea spread like wildfire. No evidence or substantiation, but it must be true, because a man they respected, the man most affected by it, proclaimed it to be so. For years, we've heard shouts of angry crowds calling for people to be locked up because someone didn't like them or how they did their job. More recently, we heard an angry mob not only storming the seat of our nation's government, but shouting repeatedly for the vice president to be hanged. All he was doing was following the law and doing the job he was hired to do, without giving in to personal or popular pressure. The crowd was angry, and their anger became more important than truth. It was more important that their anger be satisfied than it was to accept that reality doesn't always align with their personal desires. Thousands of people declaring in so many words and actions that I don't care what anybody else wants or what is right, because I'm mad and I want my way. All of this mirroring the sentiments of a man they admire who feels exactly the same way they do. That is where forgiveness comes in. It's easy to get angry when we see irrational behavior like this, especially coming from people in positions of leadership that we've always been taught to respect. But is our anger making the situation any better, or is it just fueling the fire? Yes, we need to be diligent, and yes, People need to be held accountable for what they say and do. But our anger and frustration don't make it any easier. When Jesus was being questioned about his perceived crimes, he simply allowed them to ask questions. He didn't get mad. He remained mostly silent. When they asked him if he thought he was the king of the Jews, he simply responded, "That is what you say." He didn't argue. He didn't say yes. He didn't say no. He simply acknowledged that it was being said. He was following the same principle revealed by Spirit to 19th century channeled author Andrew Jackson Davis. Under all circumstances, keep an even mind. Despite the lack of evidence, the angry mobs in Jerusalem had already declared conviction and sentence. Possibly to preserve his own safety, Pontius Pilate finally gave in to the relentless pressure and let the mob have their way. Even on his way to his own execution, Jesus remained quiet. Nailed to a cross and left to die, he prayed, "Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they are doing." Many people interpret this as meaning that the people didn't realize that they were killing God. In a way, they are right, but not in the way they might think. Yes, they were trying to extinguish an expression of God consciousness, that consciousness that expresses in each one of us. In a way, any time a person's life is taken forcefully, a little piece of God is being killed. But not in the person who is dying. It is being killed in the consciousness of the people doing the killing. I think what Jesus really meant was that they didn't understand that the people were acting out of a place of selfishness and anger rather than from a place of love and compassion. Instead of trying to understand and adapt, they held rigid to their ego-based anger. Wanting to be right became more important than doing what was right. They didn't realize they weren't harming Jesus. They were harming their own connection with Source. That was what was going through my mind when I watched people on television boldly and unashamedly seeking to maim, harm, and kill their fellow humanity, all because they didn't get their way. Their freedom wasn't being taken from them. It was their freedom that allowed them to protest and express their anger, even if it wasn't justified. It was justified in their minds, and that's all that mattered. And that's all right until it brings harm to others. The irony of this violent mindset is that so many people who profess their devotion to Jesus have become the angry mob that killed him. They don't know what they're doing or the harm they are causing to themselves. They judge, yet they believe that they will go to a place called heaven or hell based on how a personified God judges them. Their philosophy becomes self-defeating. But think about it. What would Jesus do? One of our principles that we describe over and over is that we believe in personal responsibility and that we create our own happiness or unhappiness based on how we live in accordance or discord with the laws of nature. If we fight the laws of nature, we're unhappy. If we follow the law, the way the universe is designed to operate, we find harmony. The same principle applies to the laws of man. Without order, there is chaos. Do you want to go through life fighting, or would you rather go through life seeking understanding and discovering the peace that comes with it? Whether you're upset about what your spouse did, or what someone at work said about you, or a fantastic conspiracy theory, you have the power over what comes next. Are you going to use that power to create fear and anger, or are you going to understand? In our classes, we often discuss the principles of Don Miguel Ruiz's book, The Four Agreements. They are simple principles that can be difficult to master, but when we do, we find peace. We become immune to the ugliness of the world. We find it easier to forgive, not to say that someone else's trespasses are okay, but to give ourselves permission not to own other people's lessons. The Four Agreements are simple. First, be immaculate with your word. Think, speak, and act in a way that honors truth and causes no harm to yourself or anyone else. Second, don't take things personally. Just because someone else does something hurtful doesn't mean you have to own it or that you are responsible for fixing it. More importantly, it doesn't mean you have to harm yourself or anyone else with your anger, worry, or fear. Third, don't make assumptions. Just because someone else says something, or you see it written somewhere, or you thought it, doesn't make it true. Do your part to investigate and discern what is real, and then act responsibly. Finally, always do your best. That doesn't mean being perfect, because that's not possible. Do the best you can with the conditions you're presented with. Your best might seem better on some days than it does on others, but that's okay. Do the best you can at that very moment, and remember that sometimes doing your best might mean doing nothing at all. That's okay too, if it's serving the highest good of all concerned. Think about what happened at the Capitol last week. How upset or angry did you get? If you were like the average American human being, you probably got stirred up a bit. How much influence did your emotions have on what was going on? I would dare to say they didn't help at all. Now, how much harm did your emotions cause to yourself? Probably more than you would care to ever experience again. When you hear or see something that disturbs you in any way, stop and think. Before you respond, investigate. Ask yourself why someone might feel compelled to do what they did. Dig past their emotions and discover their motivations. What have they experienced in life that might make them feel justified in their response? What has made them see something differently than you do? What experiences have they had that make their perceptions resonate with them? Step away from judgment and discover the whys and the why nots. And this applies whether the perpetrator is a stranger on television, a family member, or you. Be like a good doctor, a metaphysician, if you will. Explore the causes instead of judging the symptoms. When you dig deeper, you find understanding, and understanding brings peace. If you understand why a person is upset, even if it's ultimately something that doesn't resonate with you, at least you know how to interact with them without pouring fuel on the fire. When we seek to understand, it's easier to work together to find a solution. Forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing. They don't understand the harm they have caused. Declaring freedom at the expense of someone else's is not freedom, but oppression. In the process, you might not understand the harm you might be causing. When you get angry about hatred, you become the hater. Judgment without understanding harms us all. We are sharing this planet with 7 billion people expressing 7 billion points of view. It's okay to make room for any ideas, as long as they are respectful and not harmful. And if it turns out that the opposite is so, we can strive to use productive influence instead of imposing the force of our personal will. As the saying goes, if you aren't part of the solution, you're part of the problem. Always be part of the solution. Every time. Forgive them, for they don't know what they are doing. And as you do, forgive yourself, and the rewards will bless you well. Namaste. For additional lectures and meditation ideas, visit our website at www.meditatewnc.org. Thank you for joining us.